Good afternoon and welcome to the City of Casey Council meeting on the 20th of July. My name's Nolene Duff and I'm the chair of the panel of administrators of the City of Casey. I'll start with the statement of acknowledgement. The City of Casey proudly acknowledges the traditional owners, Casey's Aboriginal communities and their rich culture, and pays respect to the elders past, present and future. We acknowledge Aboriginal people as Australia's first peoples and as the traditional owners and custodians of the land on which we work and live. The diversity statement. The City of Casey is home to remarkable diversity with many cultures, languages, faiths and communities of worship, ages, LGBTQI communities and landscapes, together forming our rich and dynamic community story. From our first Australians to our most recent arrivals and every wave between, the City of Casey welcomes and represents all community members and their respective ambitions to live healthy, rewarding and happy lives. We recognise this diversity as our strength and we aim to share, nurture and celebrate it. I'd like to start with introductions of our panel this afternoon. Firstly, Mr. Miguel Belmar.
Good afternoon, Chair.
Good afternoon, and Mr. Cameron Boardman.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon.
And we're joined this afternoon by a number of senior officers, most notably our Chief Executive Officer, Mr. Glenn Patterson, Jen Bednar, Director, Customer and Business Transformation, Steve Coldham, Director, Community Life, Jane Collins, Director, City Planning and Infrastructure, Holly de Kretzer, Acting Director, Corporate Services, and our AV technicians, Mr. Simon Horsburgh and Jordan Barfoot, and our Governance Officer supporting us this afternoon, Nicole Estrada. We move to item 2, the confirmation of minutes. Is there a mover and a seconder to confirm the minutes of the council meeting that was held on the 29th of June 2021?
I'm happy to move those minutes, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Boardman, and a seconder.
Yes, I'll second those.
Mr. Belmar, I'll put that motion to the vote. All in favour? Carried. Item 3, declaration of interests. I've considered my obligations under Section 130 of the Local Government Act 2020 and have no conflicts to declare. I note that Steve Coldman, Director Community Life, has declared a conflict with respect to item 3.1 in the confidential items to be considered this afternoon. Do my fellow administrators or other officers have any conflicts of interest they wish to declare?
I have nothing to declare, Chair.
Thank you. Noted. None to declare.
None to declare.
Thank you. I now move to public question time, and we have 2 public questions received for this afternoon's council meeting. The first question is from submitter Mr. Peter Thompson with respect to green wedge enforcement. And the question raised by Mr. Thompson is the property at 227 Piersdale Road opposite us has been sold recently. It has been purchased by Ancor, who immediately moved most of their main commercial trucking and civil construction depot there from their existing commercial premises. Large trucks and low loaders come and go daily from 5 AM to late at night sometimes. Trees have been removed to make way for the trucks, which have probably already damaged some of the local roads and roundabouts by driving over them. They are well over the local 8-tonne limit for local deliveries, and the narrow local Piersdale and Browns roads and roundabouts are not designed for that purpose. The extreme risks to the local Cranbourne South Primary School pedestrian and cyclists, no footpaths anywhere, are greatly increased. The local wildlife and kangaroos have gone due to the noise, which is terrible, and we can't sleep. We moved to Cranbourne South 25 years ago because of the green wedge. If large companies like Ancor are allowed to bypass the green wedge limitations, a precedent has been set encouraging other commercial operators to take over as well. The green wedge zones might as well not exist. A complaint has been raised to Casey Council officers, and I'm asking the council to please stop Ancor from bypassing the local green wedge laws which are established to stop these commercial operators from ruining the area. With respect to your question, Mr. Thompson, I can provide the following information, and that is that in relation to the claims of extreme risks to the local Cranbourne South Primary School, Council operates 2 school crossings, approximately 300 metres from the Piersdale Road address. A site inspection will be conducted with representatives from Council's engineering and school crossings team to determine if the risks have changed that would require changes to traffic management in these locations. Council has also been made aware of the allegations of the land being used as a depot for trucks and machinery. An application has been made to Council to establish an existing right of use of the land. This application continues to be assessed with further information requested. In the interim, the landowner will be given a written direction to cease the use until the matter is resolved. With regard to the other matters raised in the question, those matters will be referred to the Manager Planning and Building for a direct reply. The second question we have this afternoon is from a Mrs. Deeming, and I'll read the question. It is, under Victorian law, is it legal for local government councils to provide sex-based targeted services and facilities separately to gender identity-based targeted services and facilities? If not, why not? For example, can we legally put signs on a set of public toilets declaring that one is for biological males, including males with an intersex condition, or one is for biological females, including biological females with an intersex condition, and one is for people with transgender identities of any biological sex? Question mark. If not, why not? As a taxpayer, I would like clarification of this issue and would like to know Councillor's opinion on the answer. I would also like to have the response made at the meeting and in writing to this email address. The Manager Connected Communities has provided a response, and it's quite a detailed response. The Victorian Gender Equality Act 2020 requires defined entities, including councils, to promote gender equality. The Act does not, however, specifically identify any provisions regarding bathroom signage, nor give rise to legal rights or create in any person any legal right or give rise to any civil cause of action. The Equal Opportunity Act 2010 identifies protected characteristics, including age, disability, sex, gender identity, and sexual orientation, among others, as well as protected areas of public life that include employment, local government, schools, restaurants, transport services. Workers in these settings have a positive duty to ensure that community members do not face discrimination. Under these laws, it is discriminatory to require a person who is transgender to use a toilet that does not align with their gender identity. Thank you for those questions. I'll now move to officer reports, which is item 5 in the agenda. There are 4 officer reports this afternoon in open council and 1 officer report in confidential, which is a matter concerning council business information. So I'll move to item 5.1, Road Management Plan 2021. Do I have a mover for that report?
Yes, I move that.
Thank you, Mr. Belmar. And a seconder?
Second, Chair.
Thanks, Mr. Boardman. Mr. Belmar, I invite you to speak to the Road Management Plan report.
Thank you, Chair. The road management report that we're adopting this evening is an important council document that is being adopted because it sets out the manner by which council will conduct the review and maintenance of the state of local roads. This is an important document for a number of reasons. One of those being that council has a power under the road management plan and is in fact required to maintain its local roads. The document that we are adopting tonight sets out the manner in which that work will be undertaken. It's an important document for reasons which I am particularly aware of, and one is that it provides the basis by which anyone seeking to challenge council's maintenance of roads, council can refer to this document to demonstrate that it has undertaken its statutory duties in properly maintaining roads. Council is required to demonstrate that it's taken reasonable steps to maintain its roads, and the plan we're adopting tonight is the principal document in under its statutory authority to demonstrate the process it undertakes to maintain its roads. In reading the document, I note also that as one of the indicators that of the reasonable steps we are taking, that we reviewed the way that other like councils are also taking these steps to maintain roads, and the processes we're adopting are in keeping with current standings that or other policies that have also been adopted by the local government areas. I also note in adopting this report that it has been open to public consultation, and I am satisfied in reading the reports that officers have carefully considered the submissions by members of the community and have properly addressed those concerns. And so for those reasons, and understanding that we are adopting policy which will be in place for a number of years, I endorse the policy. And I thank the officers that are undertaking this work, noting that it is really technical work, which requires careful analysis of literally right down to identifying particular roads and what work's required to be done for them. And I'm grateful for the careful consideration that's been undertaken. And for those reasons, I commend the policy and the motion tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Belmar. Mr. Boardman.
Thank you, Chair. If I could just add two very quick comments to Mr. Belmar's detailed analysis of the recommendation and the road management policy. We are required as a designated road authority under the Roads Management Act 2004 and also the Road Management General Regulations 2016 to undertake this review. The existing policy that Council is following was last reviewed in 2017, and so the statutory framework is due, as along with changes to design principles and ongoing review of our precinct management plans and other requirements, considering we are a high growth area. But as Mr. Belmar has articulated, one of the key factors of the RMP is that it does document the standards and the policies and the systems that we use to manage, inspect, repair, maintain the roads, to primarily give consistency across the standards, but also to act as a defence mechanism, if you like, against any claims that may arise in the event that there is a motor vehicle or other accidents on the roads. And to have consistency applied across those particular standards consistent with the state legislative framework, and to ensure that the schedule of inspection and maintenance and upgrade is equally clear and transparent, does offer that extra layer of protection to the organisation in case, unfortunately, in a very rare occurrence, that we become party to a civil claim in the event of such a motor vehicle or other accident. So this is the consistent approach that we are required by legislation, but it also is an additional tool in our good planning framework to give clarity and confidence to the developer community and to our own internal operations to ensure that we're meeting our statutory and also our community expectations. So for those reasons, I am also pleased to support the recommendation as stipulated.
Thank you, Mr. Boardman. I'll put that motion to the vote. All in favour? Carried. Item 5.2 is Section 11A, Instrument of Authorisation, Planning and Environment Act 1987. Do I have a mover?
Yes, I will move that, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Boardman. And a seconder? Mr. Belmar. Mr. Boardman, would you like to speak to your motion?
Chair, I won't take up too much of the panel's time with this particular recommendation. We have an obligation to continually review those council staff who are referred to the instrument, who are appointed as planning officers under the Planning Environment Act due to staff attrition and onboarding of new staff and other environmental factors. These particular reports do come to our attention with a degree of regularity, which is not surprising considering the size of our planning team here, and as I've alluded to in the previous item, the scope and extensiveness of the growth activities that we are engaged in. But it is good governance to ensure that we are maintaining this instrument of authorisation for the purpose as stipulated under the Act, and that we are lessening the administrative burden on staff to ensure that those that are classified as Class A and Class B officers understand their roles and responsibilities and their statutory obligations and can carry out those obligations accordingly. So I don't wish to make any further comments. Suffice to acknowledge the ongoing dedication and quality work output of all of those involved in the planning team and across the entire organisation, and thank them for their contribution, particularly in challenging circumstances currently, and to give confidence to the community that we are currently and ongoing reviewing all of the administrative and government responsibilities of both our roles and that of the organisation as a whole, and this is yet another example of that.
Thank you, Mr. Boardman. Mr. Belmar.
I have nothing further to add to the comments of Mr. Boardman, other than to commend the council officers who undertake this important work of ensuring that council at all times meets its statutory obligations by ensuring that the appropriate individuals have the appropriate delegations.
Thank you. I'll put the motion to the vote. All in favour? Carried. Item 5.3, disposal of land at 82I Como Parade, Clyde North. Do I have a mover for the recommendation?
Yes, I move that.
Thank you, Mr. Belmar, and a seconder.
I'll second that.
Mr. Boardman. Mr. Belmar, I invite you to speak to your motion.
Thank you, Chair. This is the return of a motion that was previously passed by Council on the 18th of May 2021, where we resolved to commence the statutory process for the sale of a parcel of land to APA Group Networks. That has now occurred, and the motion we are passing tonight, or that I'm moving tonight, ensures that we resolve to sell that parcel of land and to ensure that the Chief Executive Officer continues with the sale of that parcel of land and to act on behalf of Council. I'm satisfied that the correct statutory process has been undertaken and that in those circumstances it is appropriate that disposal of this parcel of land proceed. And for those reasons, I commend the motion.
Thank you. Mr. Boardman, would you like to speak to seconding the motion?
I echo the comments of my colleague that a process has been undertaken and that no submissions were received by the Council in relation to this parcel of land, and support the recommendation as put.
Thank you. I'll put the motion to the vote. All in favour? Carried. Item 5.4, the establishment of native vegetation offsets within the City of Casey. Do I have a mover for the recommendation?
I will move that recommendation, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Boardman, and a seconder.
I'll second that.
Mr. Belmar. Mr. Boardman, I invite you to speak.
Thank you, Chair. I'll spend a little bit of time, as best as I can, explaining this recommendation and the concept of the offset and the reason why we're doing that, which is part regulatory, part practice. It is something that has been in existence for several years now, and it is not uncommon, not just throughout the municipality of Casey, but certainly through neighbouring and other municipalities, and is a requirement under state legislation. And with that, it's important to note that the state government in December 2017 made some changes to the native vegetation clearing regulations that gave clarity or further clarity to the permissions associated with clearing native vegetation and what was required to ensure that there was the right balance between development principles and incorporating all the community and other expectations around growth areas such as Casey, and the preservation of biodiversity and other natural vegetation and other assets. And those guidelines were designed to give confidence not just to municipalities but also developers around their obligations and how there would be other mechanisms apart from state or national recognitions of parklands and other land holdings to provide that type of confidence. In short, what my understanding is under the new guidelines that anyone that's seeking a planning permit to remove native vegetation must source an offset prior to the planning approval being given and cannot clear the vegetation until the offset has been secure. And what this means that this ensures that the offset exists prior to the permit being granted, prevents landholders being left with permits which are unable to be actioned And because a number of these permits, a number of these offsets operate in competitive market environments, there's the obligation on the applicant, the planning permit applicant, to ensure they are connecting with what the market is providing through various offset management plans before they go through that. And the requirements are basically, it's the type of offsets required to meet those biodiversity and native vegetation and native fauna protection mechanisms, the amounts, certainly the minimum of the what's called the strategic biodiversity value, and certainly the location, which is within the catchment management area from where the offset is to be sourced. Now, whilst this is a process that's been around for several years, as I said, and is now more formalised through those 2017 amendments, it is one that in Casey we do have some experience with, because we currently have 33 active agreements in place across 7 offset sites. Because Casey is both an applicant through a number of the precinct management plans, and also a process authority through a number of the developers that are seeking to remove native vegetation because of current development requirements or ambitions. That's the reason why we are involved in managing those offsets, and that's the reason why we're seeking to expand that through the creation of an offset at the Blind Bight Nature Reserve. What the recommendation is to enter into a Section 69 agreement on the Conservation Forest and Lands Act, or potentially as a trust for nature offset covenant under the Conservation Trust Act in 1970, and to go through a market exercise to seek who's going to be available to manage that land through the offset regulations. And on page 63 of the report, we've provided details of what the general, special, and the specific protection units are for the southern brown bandicoot, both the market values, the potential income that could be generating. It's based upon what we assess to be the current market conditions and certain competitive elements, and what potential changes to the regulations might actually entail. In short, this is something that is seen as good practice across the state. Because of the uniqueness of the Blind Bight area, in that the southern part of the Casey municipality as it borders Western Port Bay, the conservation status, the other heritage and conservation protection, national, international Ramsar protections, in fact, in the area, this is something that I think will provide long-term protection and benefit to the community and to the municipality and to the region as a whole. And overall, irrespective of what the market provides through this exercise, it could generate approximately 2.2 million in additional revenue across all of our offset sites. So there is an economic as well as a biodiversity protection benefit by going down this particular process, and one that I understand has significant community support. So I hope that I've as best as possible explained what the motivation and what the recommendation is seeking to achieve, how it aligns with state and national legislation, and why this is something that is seen as best practice for trying to provide the right balance between those development opportunities that are clearing native vegetation, but offsetting that through the protection of specialist parcels of land that also provides a revenue stream so that the council and other parties can provide ongoing maintenance. It's not as complicated as it comes across, but it is something that is seen as a way of the future, if we put it in those terms, but certainly has significant historical experience to make sure we get the balance right. So with those comments, Chair, I'm happy to move the recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Boardman. Thank you for your detailed explanation. And Mr. Belmar.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thank you for the comments, Mr. Boardman, who's given a very thorough explanation. In seconding this motion, I simply want to note that, as set out in the material, that the principle of an offset is to deliver an overall conservation outcome that improves or maintains the viability of the environment resulting from a negative impact or loss, and that, just as Mr. Boardman has identified, what this process will ensure is that wherever there occurs any loss of habitat in the City of Casey because of development, the City of Casey tonight adopts a processing, confirms its commitment to good environmental management, by ensuring that in the area of Blind Bight, we are pursuing and ensuring our maintenance of an opportunity for those offsets to occur. I commend the officers who have done the work in identifying this as an appropriate area for offsets. It's unavoidable that in an area of high growth like Casey, there will be situations where native vegetation is removed, and it is appropriate. And I heartily endorse the process by which the offset occurs, and therefore does its best to maintain in the city of Casey, within our boundaries, a high respect for native vegetation and compliance with the statute that requires us to ensure that the offset can occur. And for those reasons, I am happy to commend the motion this evening and second it.
Thank you, Mr. Belmar. I'll put that motion to the vote. All in favour? Carried. That concludes item 5, officer reports for this afternoon. I move to item 6, reports of committees, and I simply note the record of discussion as listed in the agenda papers. Item 7, petitions. There are no petitions lodged for consideration for this council meeting. Item 8, urgent business. There are no urgent business items listed for this council meeting. So I move to item 9, which is closed council. There is one closed council item for this council meeting, and that concerns a matter related to council business information. So under section 3A of the Local Government Act, I'm proposing that the report may prejudice the council in commercial matters and that the meeting would be closed for consideration of that item. So I move to the closure of this afternoon's meeting. Thank all of you who have joined online, and we'll now move into closed council. Good afternoon.